Hello, my name is Mark Deegan, Director of Corporate Marketing at ColorID. Thank you for joining us today to learn more about this best-in-class solution from our premier partner, HID Global. Before we begin, a few housekeeping items. We're going to be recording today's presentation, and we will be sharing it with you all in the coming days. If you have any questions during the presentation, please utilize the question or chat box from the GoToWebinar dashboard. We're also going to be asking poll questions today. So in order to keep things moving on in a timely manner, please respond to those as quick as you can. With that being said, I'm going to pass this over to our partner, HID Global. Take it away, guys.
All right, thanks, Mark. I appreciate you inviting us on to talk about how we can help level up the card issuance process. So I'll let Jeanette introduce herself first before I step in.
Very good. Hi, everybody. I'm Jeanette Ondler. I'm Senior Director of Strategic Sales for HID SAFE. Looking forward to speaking to you more about the Smart Onboarding Solution Suite, and we appreciate ColorID sponsoring us today. Thank you.
All right, and my name's Nils Wallander. We're part of the product team here at HID Global, focused largely around card personalization. And just as Jeanette said, we're really excited to kind of share some ideas and thoughts around how you can potentially level up your onboarding process. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. So as we're facing, I imagine you're facing, a very difficult and new challenge as we make our way through this new era of work. And specifically, the employee healthcare onboarding process is not immune to these struggles. For many, including places like HID, the onboarding process could have been complex in the past, or it was time-consuming, fraught with several manual processes, even prior to the pandemic. But now those minor struggles that maybe we were just sort of dealing with at the time have really been magnified because of remote working and social distancing and everything that comes along with that. So what we're going to walk you through, as we sort of noted in the abstract to this webinar here, is we're going to walk you through some ideas and suggestions on how you could potentially level up your onboarding process. And with that, we're going to focus on three key areas. So one is the challenges due to organizational growth, whether that's organically or through acquisition. We're going to talk about how you can help to improve the day one experience. And then finally, increasing the flexibility, whether that's being able to use the product in a variety of different ways, or maybe getting away from sort of the more traditional aspects around card issuance and onboarding where you're tied or tethered to a single PC. And then we'll leave you with one sort of bonus item here where we'll kind of walk you through a real life customer example. And if we can, we'll take some inputs from you during a survey question, and we'll actually roll that into it. And this is largely going to be based on or centered around a smart onboarding solution, as we like to call it, that's delivered through HID Safe Credential Manager and HID FARGO Connect. And when you combine those two solutions, it really does help to improve the speed and efficiency at which you can badge or onboard new employees, and you can do it securely wherever you may be located and wherever they may be located. So those are kind of the main products we're going to be talking about here today, but there's aspects around what we're going to be discussing with you that you could be using other products and still take advantage of those sort of core tenets that we'll talk about. So with that, we will have two polls taking place during the course of this webinar, just to sort of get some information from you. We'll use that as we present towards the end, sort of a calculation of, we'll try to aggregate or average out all the people on this webinar and sort of give you a reference point of what that may be. So we're going to start with our first question here. So we'll get this launched. So the poll's now open. So if you would, just click on the number or the answer that makes the most sense to you when you look at how many workstations are you currently printing from. All right, so we'll go ahead and close that. And quickly share it. So looks as though most people are around the 1 to 3 workstations that you're printing from. Very good. We'll go on to the next question here. What's the total number of badge printers in operation today? Again, got a couple different items to check from, so we just want to click that. And again, what we'll do is we'll use this to sort of calculate out, cost savings and time savings with a smart onboarding solution that we're talking about today. All right, looks like just about everybody voted there, so we'll close it. It looks like everybody's still we're right in check with everybody. We got 1 through 3, 100% in the same spot. So this will make some of this easy when calculating things out. We'll go on to the next question here. What is the total number of badges printed by your organization each year? All right, looks like we got most everybody answered that. And kind of get a representation of who's on the line. It looks like we're in that 0 to 10,000 range, whether you're in the first 5,000 or second 5,000, but it's in that, under 10,000 badges printed in a year. So quite a number of badges. And we've got a couple more questions. So of those of those badges that are printed, how many are being shipped to remote locations? So, as you print the badges at a headquarter office or any office, are you having to actually, put them in the mail, physically ship any of those to other locations, or is it all being used at one site, or are you printing at that other site? So looks like everybody's voted again. And thanks for the quick response. So this one, there's a little bit, 40% of you are doing everything on site and, not having to ship any, where some of you are shipping, up to 25% or a quarter of the badges are being shipped out. So very interesting, nice mix. And the last question here, which will really help us in terms of calculating out the figure. So on average, how many minutes are spent onboarding a new employee? All right, and I can kind of see them coming in here, so it looks like that's closed out, and this will be interesting. So it seems everybody's, which would make sense why you wanted to attend this webinar. Most people are taking, up to 10 minutes or if not more than 15 minutes. So, you're probably thinking to yourself, there's got to be a way we can hopefully improve that time. So great. So hopefully that gives everybody a sense of who's on this webinar and sort of what figures everybody's working with. And again, we'll circle back to these towards the end. So with that, I want to hand it over to Jeanette to kind of talk about the first aspect of the webinar, which is around organizational growth challenges.
Absolutely, and thank you for joining again. Good information on those polling questions and understanding better where some of you are fitting in regards to the size and scope of a healthcare organization. So as we work with hospitals across the country, we hear about the desire to grow and to expand, and some of these hospitals are growing at 8 to 10% in population, in identities, employees, and contractors, and people that are coming to the hospitals. And obviously, when you have growth challenges, that equals to onboarding challenges and issues, and how that works across your organization. You might start with that primary campus. So when some of you talked about 1 to 3 workstations that you're using to onboard or badge your employees and contractors, that can quickly multiply. when you add another location or another hospital, and looking at saying, okay, now we have this other facility. What are the onboarding challenges and issues going to be at that location? And how can we basically come to an agreement that we have the same policies and rules, which become very, very difficult when you're trying to add these different systems. So we totally understand the growth challenges and issues and how that day one onboarding process starts. So if you go to the next slide on basically understanding, the traditional views of managing identities. And it's really important for us to really kind of peel back the layers here and understand what's going on behind the scenes. How many identities are managed locally across different buildings, different hospitals, facilities, clinics, research labs, and so forth. And what are those policies and rules that are set in place in regards to onboarding that specific type of identity? And one thing we definitely understand is with hospitals, you have more different types of identities than probably any other commercial or any other vertical out there, because everything from your healthcare workers, your contractors, your vendors, medical students, visitors coming in, patients, and so forth. So what are those policies and rules across all those hospitals in regards to the onboarding experience? How do you want that to happen? How do you want that to feel? And then you've got multiple different systems that are out there, especially when you're in that acquisition mode. You might acquire a hospital across the state line, and they have a different access control system than what you're standardizing in your main campus. And this is a very, very common occurrence that happens with those hospitals that are growing. Then you think about all the different systems. There might even be a different badging solution or a different badging system. I speak about contractors and vendors. How are you managing them? And which contractors or vendors are actually credentialed and given a badge to have access into specific locations? One of the main challenges also, and I hear this from hospitals, that we are growing at a rapid pace, but we're still using 15-year-old technology. So how do you get away from that? And how do you resolve the older technology, which equates to manual processes, manual procedures, that relates to errors and so forth, and it's very, very time consuming. Even when you're stating that onboarding a current employee today could take as much as 15 minutes. I bet if you really carve that down and really, calculate it, it's probably actually more than 15 minutes, because it happens over maybe 1 or 2 days. So what we try to do is look at your current environment, the challenges you have, and how can we simplify that for you. So let's look at, again, we're looking at identities and how that onboarding process looks and feels. What happens first? So you have to get the credentials, the right credentials, to the right people. And how do you print those badges? And how do you distribute those badges? And you need to know who needs to be onboarding. We totally understand that day one orientation, how that all works. And hospitals can range from 50 new hires a week to 250 new hires a week. It kind of depends on the size of your organization. So getting that in place and making sure that onboarding process is smooth, which is very, very challenging. So again, you look at who needs badges and where are those badges being printed. Even if it's at 1 to 3 different workstations, or you have 1 to 3 printers, those printers might be spread out, right? So as you look at that, then you're moving to the access management part of the credentialing process. What access rights and privileges are required for those particular individuals? What does that look like? From a standpoint of understanding who has access where, which are they at a certain hospital, or do they need to switch locations, right? Understanding if, we hear this a lot in an audit perspective, going into a data center, who's issued a credential that has access rights and privileges to that data center, and who approved their access. So again, it becomes a very, very challenging process. There could be switching campuses and locations, or a lot of individuals are working remote right now, but they might be locating into a different facility now after we've gotten through the last 9 months. They might be changing their processes of how employees are coming back to work. So that's critical to understand. I think, also there's a transition of individuals. Maybe someone's resigning, or they're no longer, they've taken an early retirement, or they've been put on furlough, or they're laid off. It's important to understand those individuals and how they correlate to their access rights and privileges. There you go. I think he's getting caught up with the transition of the slides there. So again, when you look at those top buckets up there, the onboarding process, access management, privacy and compliance, policies and procedures are even more critical now of who does have access to particular areas and who has the right credentials and the right access rights that coming into that particular environment. Another important data point is now understanding who has access to a particular facility and is there potentially contact tracing that is required. Understanding how that works and who's maybe been in contact with someone who has tested positive. Are there certain areas or zones that someone should not have access to? So these are all critical things that we've been working with organizations across the board over the last 5+ years, understanding their requirements and needs. There you go. So as we look at the solutions that really work for you and how providing a smart onboarding solution that takes, as Neil said, the SAFE solution and the HID FARGO Connect solution together, it really gives you the opportunity to manage these identities and their credentials across an enterprise level, across all hospitals, across all locations, making sure that you have the same policies and procedures in place. Whether it's one hospital or 15 hospitals, you have a unified policy and procedure methodology. What I'm hearing more and more of the hospitals are utilizing a identity and access management group. They're actually creating these new groups to manage identities at a higher level and understanding where they do have access, who has access, what credentials, how they were provisioned, how they were onboarded, and the same thing happens with terminations. How are they, like I said, gave the example of someone retiring, or there's layoffs, or there's furloughs, or there's terminations. How do you remove their access as well from the system that you're using today? And if there's not an integrated platform in place, it becomes very, very complex and difficult. So if you go to the next slide, just looking at the workflows and how that works. So this could be, and we do map this out with hospitals today. We start with saying, tell us about your day one orientation. What does that look like for your new hires? How does that process work? And usually what we hear on a Friday evening or a Thursday before orientation on Monday, they see an Excel spreadsheet with all the names of the new people that are to be brought on, to be onboarded on Monday. And it could be 50, as I said earlier, or it could be 250. So that day one orientation, it could take 1, 2, 3 days to really process that employee until they receive their proper ID card. And that takes multiple phone calls, emails, again, managing against an Excel spreadsheet, capturing their photo. Where does that photo then have to be uploaded into the system? Maybe there has to be an approval process. Again, it becomes very complex. When you put in play a smart onboarding solution, it really streamlines that entire process. It allows you to remove all those manual steps that you're seeing from day 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and streamlining it much more efficient. People are more productive. The experience is much more positive, right? In regards to when that person arrives on Monday morning and you're ready to roll. They go through orientation, the photograph has already been captured, it's already put into the system, and then you can properly issue that ID card. So again, we take your processes and procedures, your current workflows, and we show you how you're doing it today. And then we would pull that back and say, okay, this is how you can streamline 75, 80, and 90% of that process with a smart onboarding solution.
Great. Thank you, Jeanette.
Yes.
So as we transition from, what are some of the challenges and what are some things that we can do to help in terms of organizations that are growing, how to manage that growth. Before we switch over to the day one experience, we want to ask you guys another poll question. And this one, I think, will be interesting for those of you on the line to kind of see how the other organizations on the webinar are sort of facing the challenge with the new era at work. So if you could take a moment and read this through and just answer what makes the most sense to you. How has this new era of work altered your onboarding process today? Not at all, same process as you've always had. Some minor changes, meaning employees are still coming into the office, they're still coming in to the healthcare facility, but there's safeguards in place. Moderately, maybe now everything is more of an online process with ID cards being shipped to employees for really very limited interaction, which maybe that's already taking place, as we saw some people are actually shipping 25% of those cards. And then significantly, everything is online and you're no longer actually even issuing physical credentials, which may be difficult to do in a healthcare facility where people need to be able to see the badge. So it looks like most people are almost done voting. Give it just another second. All right, that looks like everybody's voted there. Go ahead and close that out. So it looks as though most people, for the most part, have just had some minor changes. It looks like people are still coming into the office, they're still coming into the healthcare facility clinic, but they've got some safeguards in place, whether it's social distancing, making sure there's signs on the wall, checking temperature, wherever it may be, having surveys sent out in advance of a patient coming in. And then it looks like some people have actually, made more significant, moderate changes where some of the ID cards are actually being shipped out, if not all of them. So very interesting. Sounds as though nobody has kept the process the same, which I guess is what we would expect, but it's interesting to see it, actually on paper there. Nobody's kept the same process. And people are still using, they're not, the physical ID hasn't gone away. So if you do have any comments or questions or thoughts for the group here, either us or your other peers, feel free to write that into the questions or chat within the webinar tool, and towards the end we can also do a little bit of a discussion around these two if it's interests you. With that, we'll jump back over to the slide deck here, and now we'll start talking about the onboarding process, the day one experience. As many people know, as you guys hinted at, with it being 10 to 15 minutes or more than 15 minutes to onboard an employee, it's anything but easy. Even if you do have a great process, there's probably things that you can do to improve that. So it's taking several minutes. What we're oftentimes seeing when we go out and chat with folks is it's typically a multi-day process. It may be that the amount of actual time that an operator is actually getting that card ready and sending it out is in the minutes time frame, but you need to send out a request to somebody else to approve it, and then it comes back, and then you print it the next day, and then it gets shipped. And so the realized time that a new employee sees is multiple days, right? And for that operator, there might be complicated rules where maybe depending on where they're working, there's different locations in the building they need to get access to. So now you have to figure out what level of access to give that healthcare professional. Data coming from different sites. So now you're having to have multiple screens up as an operator. We like to call this the swivel mode, where you're just actually swiveling back and forth between on your chair between different screens to see the information that you need to input into whatever system it may be, an HR system, an access control system. Maybe there's a food vending system that's used for the employees, but you're having to take data from multiple places, bring it into one, or share it out to make sure that employee gets onboarded correctly. Which of course makes a fairly steep learning curve for new operators coming on. It's takes a little bit for someone to get used to it. It might take them a month or so to really optimize the process to get it to as fast as it can be in its current state. And the bottom line here is employees are left with a subpar experience. And we say employees, that's new employees, but that's also the operators, the people that are working with the systems, right? Like they maybe could be doing other things. They could be you could, what we say, like optimize your resources. So you could still have the same amount of people working in that office, but now maybe they're doing other activities or tasks that help make the healthcare organization more efficient. And so, the biggest thing around reducing this is automating the onboarding. And that's really what Jeanette was touching on with what SAFE is able to do, HID SAFE for Workforce ID, is they're able to help automate the onboarding process where they use a rules-based provisioning system to understand, okay, based on where this person works, who do they report to, what do they need access to, all that stuff is taken out of the hands of the operator and it's automated. And now, you just answer simple, friendly questions of who they are and where they work, and maybe that's already being inputted in from somewhere else. Now they no longer have to go in and select these items. It really takes a lot of the stress off of that operator. There's a lot less clicks, so less clicks makes things go faster and eliminates mistakes. And as I mentioned on the last slide, by automating it really will help you optimize the workforce. And not only is it in automating where the data is going and the access rights and making sure that if they need to get set up in a particular system for compliance reasons, automating that, but there are things around the actual issuance of the card that can be automated, which I'll touch on here in a second. But the next piece that can help with the onboarding process, specifically if you are issuing cards to another location, or if as an office administrator or an operator, if you're working from home more often, which is what we've been seeing, is even though the badge printers may be in the office, card operators, card office managers, you're going into the office less, or you want to go into the office less. And so being able to issue those credentials remotely has been a big benefit for those that have been using this type of a system. So number one, it allows you to safely and securely send print jobs to remote locations. So with Fargo Connect and HID Safe, all the data is going to be encrypted. It's going to be sent down to the location of where the badge needs to be printed, whether that's the main card office or satellite office. And it's not just going to print out automatically. I mean, it certainly can, and we'll kind of do a brief demo of this. But the way that it's typically been implemented is if you don't know if someone's going to be in the building where the card is printed, you don't want that badge to automatically print out and the wrong person come grab that badge and take it away, right? So what we do is the same way you have like a secure print for your office printer, where you can say, I want to print this, but I need to enter in a passcode to release the print job. We have the same concept here for Fargo Connect, so you can say, I'm hitting print, but until an authorized operator is there to release the job, nothing happens, right? So this allows operators to manage the cards or manage the issuance of the cards from home and ultimately limit contact with new employees. Now, maybe you have everybody come in at one time, you go in, you grab the cards. You don't have to go be in there, every single day. So you're just trying to mitigate as much time in the office as possible. And ultimately, the employee's up and running on the first day of the job. So if you were having to ship that card to another site, you can actually use this functionality to send the card, electronically to the other site, and then it'll automatically print out. You don't need to have a card office set up. You just essentially need to have a printer sitting on a desk somewhere, and then that card will print out. So it's not as though you just stand up a whole nother card office, which could be, cost prohibitive. But so this is the aspect around remote issuance. The other way to automate the card issuance process is through inline personalization. And what that means is when you print the card, you're actually able to not only personalize the outside of the card, but as many people, many organizations are moving to contactless smart cards, so there's a chip inside the card that you can just kind of wave over a reader and it opens the door, or use it for vending. You'll print the card, personalize the outside, and while it's inside the printer, you'll actually read the information off the card or even write data to the card. And so it all happens in one step. So no longer is someone having to take the card after it's been printed and manually enter in some data about that card or tap it on a secondary reader. It really simplifies the operator involvement, happens much more quickly, eliminates any potential manual entry errors. So someone fat fingering the number in incorrectly. And what's really cool about what we do here with Fargo Connect is, this idea of inline personalization is not new. It's available with many other solutions out on the market, and so that's something that's been around for a while, even though it's maybe not so widely discussed. But what Fargo Connect does that's a little bit different is it allows for this to happen on a network. So traditionally, you'd actually have to have the PC sitting right next to the printer, attached via USB cable, in order to do the printing and reading of the card in one step. With Fargo Connect, we have a console, which I'll sort of introduce you to in a little bit, which allows for the printer to become more intelligent. It allows it to sit on the internet, for lack of a better word here, and now it can be communicated to, and it can be issuing those credentials and send all the details back in one simple step. And so that's a unique feature that we're able to bring to market with Fargo Connect. So we've walked through, challenges with organizational growth. We've talked about, improving the day one experience, some things that you can do around that. We've talked a little bit about the value and what we can do, but want to sort of pause here for a second before we go into the last piece around improving the flexibility of your onboarding process, and just sort of give you a lay of the land, the architecture of this smart onboarding solution from HID Safe with Fargo Connect. So this will get into a little bit more detail on, the nuts and bolts of the product. So if we take sort of a helicopter view of the solution and how it's architected out, you're going to have the HID Fargo Connect solution as the primary engine for printing the credential, managing consumables, anything that has to do with the printing of the badge. And then HID Safe is going to be everything around managing the life cycle of a credential. So that could be, capturing a photo of that new employee. It could be making sure they have the right access rights assigned, making sure the data is flowing properly into all the different systems. So as Jeanette was mentioning, HID Safe will sort of sit more or less on top as this umbrella solution that can communicate to a variety of different access control systems, vending systems, visitor management systems. And so Safe will make sure all the data gets down to the right systems. It'll automate that onboarding process. And then Fargo Connect will be there to make sure that the issuance of the card happens efficiently and securely. So if you look over here, just in terms of who would be doing what, in terms of when you think of like an administrator or an operator. So an administrator sets up the solution, maybe looks at reports, puts printers online, that type of thing. Operator, that's the person that's actually hitting print, making sure that the card's being delivered to the right person. So within Fargo Connect, we have a production portal. This would largely be used by that administrator, designing cards, managing the printers. If we need to do anything from a support perspective, that's where that would take place. The operator, their main entry into this solution is going to be HID Safe, right? So they're going to see just one application, HID Safe, and they're not going to jump back and forth between applications. It's probably one of the things you're thinking is like, well, I thought you guys were talking about how jumping back and forth was bad. And we do. We think that adds inefficiencies. But from an operator perspective, they're going to be using one application for issuing the badge. The thing that they're doing, 99% of the time, that'll all be done within Safe, right? And so you'll be hitting print from within Safe. And then once the card is printed, we have a console. This is a physical piece of hardware that you would go to release that print job if needed. And we'll walk through that, a little bit of a demo, if you will, of what an experience would be.
I was going to say one thing here real quick, and you look at how Safe kind of sits in the middle there. So we have a very robust integration platform that, as we were talking about, being able to interface and interact with multiple different access control systems, which is usually a common theme within a healthcare organization, maybe having 1, 2, or 3 different access control systems that are at multiple hospitals. But also we're consuming that data around new hires, or we're listening to that HR system. So that integration into Workday or Lawson or whatever your HR system or Active Directory, that authoritative source, is really important, because we are constantly seeing modifications and changes. So if there are new hires that are put into HR, we're going to consume that information. Then because of the workflows and the designs and that integration path we have with Fargo Connect, it goes through the proper issuance per your role and the location of where you're supposed to be working at. So it's role-based and location-based access, which is really, really important. Again, we're trying to get people to keep people off the keyboards and manually entering data, take them away from that Thursday or Friday Excel spreadsheet they get of all the new hires that are to be onboarded on Monday. And it's already in the system. We're creating a profile on that individual. Therefore, we know their access rights or privileges, as well as, you know, connecting with Fargo Connect, where that print job should go and what that access card should be.
Perfect. Thank you for adding that in. All right. So I mentioned that there is a physical piece of hardware that sits alongside the printer or bank of printers, since you can plug in multiple printers to this console. But the console is what takes those printers, which, you know, I work with the team that makes the printers, but, you know, not to hit on them too much, but the printers really aren't that intelligent. They're not very smart. And so this console takes those printers, which are, you know, fairly dumb devices in this new world of connected things, and it allows that printer to be connected on the internet. And so that allows Fargo Connect and HID Safe to, you know, effectively communicate to that printer regardless of where it is. And so not only does it allow it to be this secure edge device, it does have a screen and also a contactless reader on the top. That's why that card is sitting on top there, to sort of build in some additional value into what this thing does. And really what we've been hearing from customers, we sort of added in functionality. So for example, the card reader, that wasn't a part of the original product, but we had a large technology company that's, you know, located in a variety of different locations. And they said, hey, you know what, rather than having to use a username and password to log into the console, I'd like for my operators to have a much more efficient process. We already have these smart cards, these, you know, access cards. Can I use that access card to log into the console? We said, that's a great idea. And this was right, you know, they were on the ground floor when we were putting the solution together about 3 years ago. And so we added in the reader to the top. But so you can use that to log in. And once you log in, then you can release the print job, which we'll give a little demo to. But you're also going to get videos on how to change consumables. If there's something wrong, there's a video like helping to clean the printer. So there are some friendly tutorials in there. You're going to have consumable status. So you don't need to have a physical PC next to the printer. So as I mentioned, in a satellite office, you'd have, you know, let's say 3 printers sitting there. You'd have one console, and you don't need to have any additional PCs, screens, mice, keyboard. You could just have this set up in that satellite office. And as print jobs are being sent in to Fargo Connect, they would go down to this console, and then an operator could, you know, log in, and they can release the print jobs as needed. You know, as that employee walks in, I can go ahead and print those print jobs off. So with that, some of the backbone of what the solution is, I'll walk through a fairly high-level demonstration of the solution. And what I'll say here is, you know, this just sort of scratches the surface of you know, the capabilities of the smart onboarding solution of Safe with Fargo Connect. If you'd like a more detailed demonstration, please contact ColorID. They'll connect with us, or they can run the demonstration themselves and sort of walk you through the solution in more detail. So this isn't, we're not going to be able to do a full-on demonstration of the product in the time that we have. We wanted to give you a sense for, you know, what are the pieces from an architecture perspective, and what does the solution look like, and what would the flow be for a typical operator. So for start, you need to design a card. And so this is an actual screenshot of HID FARGO Connect. This is a, you know, sample card for a university where they're designing a card. It should be pretty straightforward if you've used a card designer before. It's got all the elements you would expect out of it. You can manage smart cards, you can manage printers, you can do just about anything from here. So once you've designed the card, that'll be then linked up to HID Safe. And so now let's kind of go through the experience of reprinting a badge for somebody, or printing a new badge for someone as they come in. So they would, you know, log into Safe. So again, this is a screenshot of HID Safe. They could search for the name. They could enter in a brand new name of that employee coming in. Typically, what we've seen is if you're onboarding a new employee, you're not having to enter in all the details from scratch. It's not like you're creating an add new personnel and you're putting in all those details. SAFE is going to sort of import or automatically pull data from HR systems or other systems where the data already exists. So typically when you onboard and you go to print a badge, you're just going to look up that name because it'll already exist in SAFE if it's already been entered in within an HR system or something else. So you look for the name, open it up, you say, okay, are there any details that are missing? Okay, you need to add in a middle name, maybe the picture is missing, so we'll go ahead and capture that photo. We'll enter that in to complete the record, whatever they needed to do. Once that record had been completed, you'll notice that they didn't have to go and identify like what access levels they need, what access rights are going to be provided to them. That's all going to be handled through the automated processing, or automated workflows, I should say. And so at that point, you're more or less just going to hit print, and then the workflows again will be able to say, okay, based on where this person's located, let's send it to the Austin, Texas office. And so you're not having to actually specify the specific printer. If you want, you can have it set up to where you need to specify a specific printer, but you can build it in the workflows to automate that process as well. So then that print job will be securely transmitted down to the console, wherever that printer is located. It'll show up in the console. And so this is what that console will look like. And if you have the secure print enabled, you're going to need to have an operator log in to release that print job. Now, let's say you're in the main card office and having to go in and release a print job every time sounds like a big annoyance. It would be. And you do not have to have this secure print feature enabled. If you want to have that cards just print out as soon as they're received, that is certainly doable. You just don't turn on the secure print feature. The secure print is actually an option. You have to turn that on. It doesn't automatically come on. But we've seen people use it in multiple different ways. Maybe the satellite offices can be set up for secure print, where the main card office, which is behind a locked door, just prints off automatically. So you don't. It's not a blanket thing that is applied to every single console. You do have some control in being able to configure each console to behave slightly different. So in this case, the operator is going to then go ahead and release the print job. The card comes out, contactless card comes out. In this case, this was actually a contactless smart card. And so the information was read, the access control information was read, sent back to SAFE, which was then enrolled within the access control system. And this card is essentially active as soon as it's printed. And it can be that easy. So very few clicks, a lot of automating happening behind the scenes, and then a fairly intelligent issuance process to make sure things happen smoothly and get to where they need to be in a secure way. And again, this is a fairly high-level look at the two pieces and how they fit together. If you want a more detailed demonstration and kind of ask questions about each component, and again, I should say, if you do have questions, you can put them into the chat and we'll talk about them here at the end. But if you want to have more dedicated time, just contact ColorID and they can walk that through with you. All right, the last of the three major areas we were going to take a look at here was around limited flexibility. And this really kind of gets into historically, card issuance onboarding has been tied to isolated workstations, meaning you need to be on a physical PC or you need to have multiple applications running on that PC to be able to access all the correct triggers and flags to get that new employee onboarded. So, PC-based software, fairly reliant on IT support. Product updates can be a nightmare. Windows update can essentially blow up the entire system, whether it's your camera or anything else. Adding a new workstation can take time and money. You'll have to physically go get another PC, or you have to transfer everything from one PC to the next, all the applications, and you have to bring in IT to get that done. And then there's limited flexibility to issue out of the card office, right? So you're needing to use that dedicated PC to get that done. And it can be difficult to have multiple workstations sharing a pool of printers. So if you have 3 printers, or maybe you have just 1 printer, but you've got 4 different operators, it can be difficult to have all 4 of them connected to that one printer, especially if you want to do the smart card management. Because as I mentioned before, historically, if you want to do printing and smart card reading at the same time, it was connected through a USB. So it can be a challenge to have 4 PCs connected to one over USB. Right? And with Fargo Connect, as I kind of highlight, we can kind of get away from that. And there's limited handheld device options for this, you know, taking the entire thing and putting it onto a tablet or even a phone for that matter. So kind of fairly rigid in its thinking. And so with the smart onboarding solution through Safe and Fargo Connect, you know, we have a connected cloud experience for rapid deployment. Really the great thing around the Connect offering is you never need to install any software or driver for this, and that's, you know, print drivers. So if you've ever had to deal with a print driver before in the past and having to update those as things come out, you're not going to have to do that with this solution. And this can be an on-premise experience, like an on-premise cloud experience, or a fully hosted experience, right? So in either option, you're not going to need to install any drivers or software from PC to PC. So if all of a sudden your work laptop goes down and they give you a new one, you're not going to have to install any new software for the Connect side of it. You just essentially log in through the website. It's there. You know, if it's on-premise, of course, you'll need to be on the network. But if it's a fully hosted solution, of course, you can be anywhere from that. And that allows you to be able to issue from realistically any device from anywhere, right? If it's on-premise, you just have to make sure that that device is connected to the network. And then there's, you know, we could go into this if we would like, but there's a variety of different security measures around how the information is encrypted. We're essentially using banking standards. So if you feel comfortable with doing online banking, you should feel comfortable doing this, or using this, I should say. And then the last component around the flexibility is visibility and monitoring. So with Fargo Connect, you're able to, in real time, see your entire issuance system, meaning you can see all the printers, see whether they're online, you can see, you know, if they're running out of consumables. So that image down there, that's a screenshot of a particular printer, and it's showing you, you know, green means it's got plenty of consumables, yellow means it's, you know, under the 50% mark. So it'll help you eliminate any out of stock issues. We'll actually send you an email, or there's a possibility of being able to send you an email as you start to run out, and then you can manage the printers while you're working at home. So you don't have to be in the office to manage the printers, meaning change printer settings, you know, seeing what they're doing. You can do all this remotely. So you don't have to be standing right in front of the printer. So that's another aspect that we can do from a flexibility standpoint. And, you know, those are hopefully those three pieces there that we talked about: the organizational growth, the day one experience, and the flexibility. You know, hopefully that gives you some ideas, you know, whether it's using us or going elsewhere, and how you can level up your onboarding process. But hopefully that gives you some ideas of what you can look into in the future. The last piece here that we'll leave you with is, you know, what's the potential impact on your business from a time and cost perspective. And from a cost perspective, typically think about this from a, you know, very like what numbers can I see perspective. So it's almost like an iceberg where, you know, icebergs are fairly huge, but a lot of times we only see the stuff that's on the surface. And so the same thing is true for cost per, when you think about the price of printing a card, people oftentimes think about the cost per card. What is the credential cost? What's the ribbons, over laminates, things that actually create that card? But there's many other things that go into it that affect, you know, what the overall realized cost of that card is. You know, the PC maintenance, this card office staffing, holding costs, shipping cards all over the place. And so we sort of took all of these aspects, specifically the bottom aspects here, because blank credentials, ribbons, over laminates, I mean, those are numbers that will likely be different for everybody, and it's very specific to what you're doing. So what we did was we wanted to come up with a way of sharing, you know, what the time saving is and the cost saving is based on some of these other items. And so we'll walk through a customer reference. There's a real customer that we had that we kind of walked through, you know, what was their time savings going to be and cost savings be. So number of identities managed, 15,000, current time to onboard, 15 minutes, not too far off from most of the group here. They did have quite a bit more locations. I think it was around 3 was this group's. Cards printed a year, only 5,000, where I think here it was between 5 and 10, so roughly 8,000. Cards shipped to employees, 2,000. It's about the same. Well, for some of you, about the same. And then they had more card printers. They had 10 printers versus I think it was around the 3 that I had noted here. And so when you start rolling all these pieces up, what we found was, from a time-saving perspective, automating the workflow would be about 1,000 hours, reduce maintenance time about 21 hours, and so in total, just over 1,000 hours saved for this customer. And then from a cost savings perspective, automating that process was also going to save them some dollars and cents. So it was going to save them around $20,000. Maintenance and inventory cost was going to go down by 35. And then actually the last piece here, I noticed that I got a duplicate of automated workflows. The other piece there, that's actually going to be shipping costs. So because they're shipping 2,000 badges, there's costs associated with shipping those badges. So the top one, now that I look at the number that ship badges and what we estimate that out to be, the top one there, 20,000, that's actually the shipping cost. You have your maintenance and inventory costs at 35,000. Automated workflows, that's the one that's 24,000. So in total, the total cost savings for this customer was around $80,000. And
I'm gonna mention real quick on one point is really automating those workflows, those policies and procedures. Obviously, those are all infused in the process, so there's not people making decisions outside of that policy workflow. When you talk about 15 minutes to onboard someone, what we find when we really peel back the layers and sit down and understand the steps it takes to onboard an employee, there's multiple people touching that process. So the 15 minutes, that looks all well and good, but really when you look at it, that if I have to get approval from Andrew and I send it over to Andrew and it takes him a day or two to get back with me, there's days that go by before that onboarding process gets completed. So it gets a little bit chaotic and confusing. So when you look at the time and money it takes to do this process, and when you could have a system, the right technology and the right solution to streamline this, means streamlining 1,000 hours, it's probably really more double or triple that when you take into account all the people that touch that entire process and how that looks and feels. So again, and it makes people, instead of doing administrative tasks, their job role could be allocated to do something more important than keying in data and taking an Excel spreadsheet and keying in information here and going to another system here. So we're really driving productivity. And then at the end of the day, we're driving that day one experience for that new hire or that new employee that's coming in to where they could get their credential. It was a clean, click, smooth, automated process. So there's so many parts and pieces to get this information. We really do sit down with you and understand your current environment and show you actual cost savings that would be very specific to your organization.
Yeah, no, that is perfect. And then what I did do, sorry, Jeanette, I've heard you talk about it before in the past. So I was running some numbers while you were presenting about the organizational growth. And I won't flip them up on the screen here, but I'll just kind of talk everybody through it. Essentially, the total time savings would actually be more for if you aggregate out this groups, just because you're printing more badges than what is shown here. So they're only printing 5. You guys are printing somewhere between 5 and 10,000. So the total time saving was actually a little bit more, but the cost savings was a little bit less than what you see here. The automated workflow price was actually higher than this, but the maintenance of the PCs and because you have less workstations, you have less printers, there's some cost savings that go around there that sort of help reduce that. So this is a fairly good estimate for what most people on this call would see. You might see a little bit more time saving and maybe a little less cost savings on there, but this hopefully gives people a ballpark. And as Jeanette said, we can work with we use work with ColorID and our team. We can help give you more of a personalized look at what this is and give you more details. Obviously this is a little bit of a helicopter view of what those numbers are.
Okay, so in closing, I will start and let Niels finish here is, when you talk about a smart onboarding solution and what it really means to you as a healthcare organization, we talk a lot about, automation and streamlining the processes, getting away from old technology and old solutions that maybe you've been using for the last 15, 20 plus years. It's about setting the policies and procedures in place. And over the last 9 months, I think that has been pushed to the max for our hospitals. What I've been hearing with the hospitals I've been working with is they never realized how policy and procedures are so important regarding who gets access where, who could come into a facility, who can come into a specific hospital or a surgical center, and so forth. So it's very important to streamline those manual processes that you have today and really look at how can we be more efficient? How can we drive productivity? We would never want anyone that needed a credential to wait, 1, 2, 3 days or more to get that credential. So again, it's about provisioning the right access and the right access levels with that credential as well. So we break down those silos of all those different systems you might have at your facility and provide that integration platform to drive those efficiencies. Niels, I'll let you close it up here.
Yeah, no, I think you did a really good job kind of showcasing the different pieces that we kind of talked through here today. Since there are just a handful of minutes, what I'll do is we'll kind of go on to the last slide here, and we'll open it up for any questions. I don't know if Mark, I think you have access to the chat and the question piece if you want to open that up. If there's any questions that came in while we were speaking.
Absolutely, Nels. You guys are lucky. I got a couple of them for you, so get ready. Let's see if you guys know the answers. So one end user says that they've had multiple acquisitions over the past couple of years, and they're curious, if the solution's going to be able to support their multiple PAC systems, their access control systems altogether.
Sure. I'll take that one. Thanks, Mark. Absolutely. I mean, that is part of the value proposition when you're working with a safe solution plus the Fargo Connect system together. We have been in this industry for decades, so we have well over 50 plus access control systems that we connect and communicate to today. So there's really haven't one that we haven't heard of. So absolutely, and that's part of the beauty of bringing in an integrated platform like this, because we know that you do acquire different hospitals, and they'll have a different access control system. So from our perspective, behind the scenes, we don't care if you have what systems in place. We'll provide the proper integration to those systems, and as those credentials are pushed to the appropriate hospitals, we know their role and their location and their access rights.
Home run. Well done. All right, let's see the next one. We have someone who says our staff is currently working remotely. Do we still have to go into the office to release the print jobs?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so I guess I brought up the console, but maybe I didn't get into if you don't want to go into the office to release those, but you still want to have the flexibility. That's actually something that we're adding into the product, so that'll come out probably in the next 3 months, to where you can, within the portal, you can actually release the print jobs. You don't have to be at the actual printer site to do that. So if you still want to have the secure remote print for operators that are on site, but maybe have an override, that is something that we're adding in to Fargo Connect. So it's not there today, but it's just around the corner. It's should be on our next release. So
very good to know.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That was probably news to you, Mark, wasn't it?
Yes, thank you. Okay, let's see here. We recently moved to a CIOS credential with an elite key. Will the solution support this key type?
Yes. Yep. So it will support CIOS credentials, and it will also support HID elite keys, which I think is what he's referring to. So, or she is referring to. So within Fargo Connect, you'll be able to get a key file from HID, and then we'll essentially be able to upload that into the system, so that way it's there on your printer. Because you need to have the keys actually on the reader in the printer to be able to read that. It's a security safeguard that HID sort of put in place. So yeah, no, we can certainly support that. And awesome. I should note, I thought of something on that, being able to, can I release the print jobs, while he's working remote? You can also, if you didn't want to have the secure remote print because nobody's there and the printer's locked up. I think I mentioned this, but you can have it so the print jobs automatically print, so you don't have to go in and release that. But just to clarify that.
Very good. Okay, last one. How do we set up automated workflows?
Well, that's a really good question, and every hospital is a little bit different. So when we set up we work with you on the configuration and your policies and rules, approval processes. How do you want that process to be managed? Is there one approval or two approval before that credential can be printed? So there's variations on that. And that's really our job, to sit down with you and walk through that. And those are some decision points you will have to make from a hospital perspective of what is our workflows, what is our policies, and how do we want this to be streamlined. But we're extremely flexible, and every hospital is a little bit different, but what we do bring to the table also is best practices and what other healthcare organizations are doing.
Awesome. Excellent work, guys.
Thank you.
That's the last of the questions that we're rolling in here. I don't see any more coming in. So very informative. I think you guys hit a home run there. So so everyone, what are your next steps? Well, if you found the solution interesting, let's take the time to set up a demonstration. We can take a deeper dive and bring in additional colleagues to see if this solution is right for your organization. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be sharing this presentation recording with you, and you'll be able to request that demonstration there, or just by simply contacting your ColorID account representative. So with that, thank you again for continuing the conversation with ColorID and HID Global. Everyone take care. Goodbye.
Thank you. Have a great week.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.